Good evening. My name is Liza Gentile, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Johnson & Wales University, and also a proud alum. Thank you for joining us for New Media Who, Keeping Current in 2021. We're excited to bring you this discussion with a panel of alumni who have extensive experience in this area. While they all have different roles and areas of expertise, you'll learn how they all use similar rules and processes to achieve their goals. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. If you have a question for the panel, please add them to the Q&A section. They'll be answered at the conclusion of the discussion. Please use the chat to message other attendees. I'd now like to introduce our panelists. Dylan Burke, class of 2012, is the owner of Front of House, a digital marketing and creative agency serving clients in the hospitality space. Dedicating the last 6 years to his agency, Dylan believes simply showing up is not enough in today's digital landscape. Constantly reciting the phrase, "half of our job is education, the other is execution," Front of House has scaled on a single principle, malleability. Social and digital marketing of today looks nothing like tomorrow, and it's important we all adapt in real time. Front of House serves clients ranging from Michelin star chefs to fast casuals and hotel chains to rooftop bars. Dylan has been tapped as an expert on the topic of social media within the hospitality industry on Good Morning America, in the New York Post, and even headlined Eater's Going Viral mini site. Dylan's photography has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and New York Post, among others. Dylan lives in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with a shaggy dog named Lettuce. Next, we have Jorge Cespedes, class of 2012. Jorge is a Costa Rican American chef and beverage expert with more than 10 years of experience in the US and abroad. As a graduate of Johnson & Wales University, Jorge has developed inspirational culinary tours of the most flavorful places in the world, making him the guy you call when you're visiting various cities. This wealth of travel made him realize the power every cocktail and every dish has to tell the story of its creator, its ingredients, and their place of origin. As a culinary content director, Jorge is dedicated to bringing culinary-driven ideas as an ideator and food and beverage content creator. He is also the writer, producer, and host of Good Food News, where he shares cool and inspiring stories about the world of food with a lighthearted and comedic spin. Finally, Marielle Donahue, class of 2013, graduated from JWU Providence with a bachelor's in fashion merchandising and retail marketing. As a student, she interned with the retail marketing team in Nickelodeon. Upon graduating, she secured a full-time job there and continued to build hundreds of omnichannel marketing campaigns. She helped drive sales for Nickelodeon's merchandise at various retailers, including Walmart, Foot Locker, Forever 21, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and Kroger. Currently, Marielle is the Director of Social Media and Influencer Strategy at Viacom CBS Consumer Products. She oversees all social media and content to drive sales and awareness for Viacom CBS networks, which include Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, and Paramount, and their licensed merchandise. She also launched and continues to oversee the @Nickelodeon Style Instagram account. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. The format of this program is more of a discussion than a moderated panel. I will turn the conversation over to you all now. To get us started, would you each please take a few minutes to tell us a bit more about exactly what it is that you do? Let's start with you, Dylan.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I own a company called Front of House that I started about 5-6 years ago. The principle was being sort of translating the digital world to the hospitality industry. I graduated with an F&B degree. I had anticipated sort of going directly into that space. And as I got sort of closer and closer to graduation, I found myself being a little bit more pulled to the internet and a little bit more pulled towards how to sort of market our product, or the product that I had been trained to really, not trained, but I guess the product that I sort of knew and love, right, which is food and hospitality. I come from also a background in food, or a family in food rather. And I really, we started the company, I guess, again, with this premise or this principle of making sure that, we spoke both languages. And I still say that we spoke both hospitalitarian and we also spoke, internet. And how do we marry these things, and how do we do them in a way that's palatable for both people, right? And I think from there, we've really scaled up over the last couple of years. Still a small agency, about 10 people, but we're based here in New York, right in the Lower East Side. We work with a number of hotel properties and restaurants, and we've really scaled. Again, as Liza had mentioned, everything really from fine dining down to a fast casual grilled cheese place, and it's really helped us figure out and find our niche. And as we continue to scale in a sort of knock on wood, post-pandemic space that we hopefully head into, we're really looking to, I think, spearhead towards hotels, how their F&B properties function, how we market those things, and how we sell really interesting experiences to people rather than just selling a product to them. Because right now, the digital and social space is so full of products, and what we really want to do is sell them something that they can really grab, even if it's just through a screen. So that's the general principle. I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about front of house later, but I'll turn it over actually to Jorge to take it next.
Thank you, Dylan, and good evening, everyone. Well, I'm a chef by heart, right? I studied culinary school in the Providence campus, and it was awesome. But I realized that I didn't want to be in a restaurant. I really like the marketing side of food. So I moved into consulting and kind of the agency side, and I've been on that world for about 10 years now. And as a culinary content director, my job is to be a storyteller and help our clients communicate the right information in the most creative of ways about their products. Sometimes they're really cool products, and sometimes they're really boring products. And as professional food marketers, we have to make any kind of product sound amazing and help them tell that story, which even for the client can be super hard because some of those not awesomely cool products still have a big place in the industry. So we create campaigns, we create an entire content calendar and schedule to help them tell their story from beginning to end, from infancy to all the way to adulthood of an idea. And we'll get more into what the content of food industry and food service looks like. And I'm going to have Marielle talk a little bit about herself.
Awesome, thanks. I'm Marielle. I, as Liza said, was a fashion merchandising and retail marketing major, which led me into the fashion industry until I switched gears a little bit into entertainment. So still marrying the world of retail within the entertainment space. And currently I am the person who oversees and helps execute all of our social media and influencer efforts to help drive sales and awareness for our consumer products. I will reference them as CP, just so you know, that's what we say. That is sort of our jargon. So if you hear me say that, that's what that means. And so what even CP for an entertainment company looks like is if you go to a Walmart or you go to a Target and you see a Paw Patrol toy or a SpongeBob t-shirt, that is what our consumer products CP team does. And my job is to drive sales and awareness for all of those products across all the networks. I initially started on just Nickelodeon. That was what our bread and butter was. And then as the landscape has changed so much and the fandom for all of these other shows within the Viacom CBS networks have grown, they too want merch. So we are doing the merchandise across all the different brands. Some of the big ones are SpongeBob, South Park, The Daily Show, Star Trek, Paw Patrol, to name just a few of those. And so really that is a role that I created for ourselves and has since built a team for it because there was a gap in our team and a gap in our industry. And when I first started on our team, I was working a general marketing role. And at the time we were doing print ads, which is something that sounds crazy and not something that would actually even be in our marketing mix right now. But it just is a testament to say how quickly and how much this industry has evolved and the importance of social media to the marketing mix and then specifically to our business really, really increased. And it was something that we became more and more reliant on. And in doing so, I sort of started this, what I called a side hustle. In addition to my role, I just started organizing all of this information and helping people to understand. And then realized that this is a little bit of a niche expertise. And a lot of what I was doing was not just executing on social media, but helping other people to understand social media and the importance of it to the business and to the marketing mix. And that's something that I'm still doing today and years later. I think that's something that's going to be a constant, because this is a constantly evolving space. Every single day I log on to Instagram in the morning and there's a new update, it feels like. And so one of the things that is really key is just staying consistent and staying on top of all the platforms, and being really like a student of the game. That's really, really key to make sure that we, all three of us here, are not only teaching it, but we're also learning it at the same time as a lot of us, the same time that we're teaching and the same time that we're executing it, which makes it tricky, but also makes it fun and exciting, and a fun way to try different things and execute different pieces. What I think is interesting is a consistent thread between the three of us is that we're all doing a role of storytelling, but also seeking to help others understand this industry in different ways. But that is really a constant between the three of us, and finding a way to easily translate that into people who aren't necessarily socially savvy, and that's okay. I think that that's something that people want to be socially savvy, and they certainly can be, and they are, but then there's just a whole level of understanding each platform, understanding all of the different specs, and okay, this is a reel, and what does that mean? And the best way I really stay on top of it is just creating myself and staying as active as possible myself. And I think that these guys can probably attest to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you just said is really interesting, because there is, with social media, especially as it is, right, with with my grandparents now having Facebook profiles, and with with the we'll call it the democratization of all the platforms, right? Like now they've made it so easy for everyone to get on that everyone can. But there's a really big difference between sort of interest and being a social media user and really being platform literate, right? And being able to solve and speak this language, solve the problems that come up, and figure out and speak the language of each of the platforms. TikTok is so different from Instagram, and Instagram is so different from Facebook, despite being owned by the same company. And it's really like every different thing requires slightly different tweaks. And, that to me is actually not the most fun part of the job, but it's a byproduct really of getting to do the fun part of the job, which is creating content and storytelling. And as you're mentioning, going back to really the thing that I always say is, and I think you touched upon it, Marielle, is half our job is education, and the other half is the execution of what we just educated people about. And what we were talking about.
As we go.
Yeah, big time. I mean, everything happens so rapidly on social and on digital, which is part of the fun, and which is part of playing in the major leagues and really seeing it go. But you need to learn how to use these things now as a brand. You can't just fumble around when you have 200,000 followers. You can't just hope that it works. You really need to be able to lean into something, learn it, absorb it as quick as you can. And then of course, there's still a trial and error to every brand, right? The beauty of social is you do have, the rules aren't so strict. The rules aren't, like some of the other sort of marketing channels, which is fun. That being said, it also comes with a risk, because people can unfollow. If you do things incorrectly, people can show you immediately that what you're doing is not what they want. And sometimes that's a big learner's curve, I find, just in general. Something that I may shoot, or I may create a video that I love so much, and it'll completely tank, and I just kind of have to roll with the punches. And that's just the, that's the gamble that you take.
And a super interesting thing about that is that what we've seen in the food world is that, as fun as it is on social, the attention span is very short. And it's so hard to tell the story about food, sometimes in 30 seconds, which TikTok has done a great job at doing, but it's very hard, right? The way TikTok tells a story is super rough and not very robust, but it's fun. But when you want to tell a story that has more meaning, you want to tell a story that takes 3 minutes, that's now a long play video. So it's been very interesting to understand that you gotta tell the story, you gotta tell it right, and you gotta tell it fast, or they're gonna be bored.
And that what works on one platform might not work for the other. I think that's been quite a learning curve coming from a traditional old school media company. We are used to producing best in class television spots. And what goes on television is definitely not what would work on social. And that has been something that I've seen evolve throughout the past 2 years. When we, I think, first started getting in social, we just started repurposing assets and having this one work for this platform and having a la carte solution across the board and having it work for every single platform with the same asset. And what we've since learned is that's really not the way we can approach it. We have to treat them differently. You're in a very different headspace when you're watching TV and consuming a television commercial versus scrolling on your phone versus even TikTok versus reading on Twitter. And that's part of really getting in the consumer's mindset and understanding, okay, what is our objective here? How do we want to execute that? What is the story that we're telling and how quickly can we do it? But also, how do we make it look pretty? And how do we also make sure it sells? And how do we make sure it does this? And there's a lot of objectives to balance, but trying to map all of that out and finding a way to bring them together is definitely something I have to do in across very different brands too. What works on South Park doesn't always work on SpongeBob and definitely doesn't work on Paw Patrol. And finding a way that you're aligning with each creative aesthetic, with their voice, and then within the platform and the goals of the campaign.
I think what's particularly interesting is that, you know, we keep going back to this, or at least I keep going back to this like education component of it. And, you know, we've worked with, maybe different for you guys, you know, that we're all from slightly different spaces, but I've worked with a lot of chefs and a lot of restaurateurs and a lot of small hoteliers and people who they know what marketing is because they've been marketing consumers, right? The same way I said that social media, people are social media users. You're not really, you know, a social media marketer. But people do have a base understanding of what marketing is, particularly if they own a business. You know, it's not always the way I would do it, but it's certainly, they have an understanding of it. And I think what we've learned is that there's very different ways that you need to justify these things to people. You know, back in the day, and I say that back in the day, but really 8 years ago, 6 years ago, you used to just be able to say, social media is really important, we should be doing it, right? And everyone would say, I don't know, it's kind of expensive, should we do it? And now you don't have to make that same argument. You know, people know that social is important. If anything, the pandemic has really underscored just how important it is to the food and beverage, rather in the hospitality industry. When you're closed and you can't get your word out and you don't have your foot traffic, you know, at least for us, you need those social channels. You need that website that actually functions. And in many cases, you know, you need an ordering platform on your website that doesn't go through Seamless, who's taken a 25% cut, or Grubhub or Uber Eats or any of these people. So it's really underscored that. And for us, the way we've been able to really justify recently is explaining to them that social is a way to get a few steps closer to your target audience. And when we did a little dry run rehearsal of this, I know we talked a lot about this, but I always like to bring up this thing that I call the billboard example, where, you know, it's comparing social to another medium, which would be a billboard. So let's say there's a billboard, and for the sake of the example, there's 1,000 people that drive by it every day. But on the billboard is women's high heel shoes. So you can make the assumption that of the 1,000 people that drive by, 500 of them are men, and that's not really applicable to them, right? Furthermore, it's a luxury high heel company. So you can make the assumption of the 50% or the 500 people that drive by it, only maybe 20% would even be able to afford that level of shoe. Beyond that, you know, you can bring it a little closer, you can keep going down, you know, where is it based? What's the income level of where the billboard is? All sorts of things. But now imagine that instead of putting up that billboard where you lose immediately 70% of your traffic, that you can just work with a fashion blogger. You can just work with someone who has 100,000 or even has 1,000 people baked in. We'll use the same number, has 1,000 people baked into their following. Not only do you get there, and we're jumping ahead because this is an influencer thing, but this is really how social has brought you closer to marketing your product. I can now work with that blogger, that person has 1,000 followers, and of their following, we can really make the assumption that anyone who follows them is interested in women's fashion. So out of the gate,
more qualified audience.
100%, right? So I'm already getting rid of all of that, unknowing. All the men are out of there, not all of them, but many of the men are out of there. Many of the women who aren't interested in luxury fashion are out of there. So it really brings you a little bit closer. And I use that just as a way to explain that, yeah, while this isn't a billboard, it sort of is a billboard that lives on our phones, except for the fact that we don't need to put it above a tunnel. We can just target it to the people that we think are actually going to buy our product, whether that be with ads or influencers or just in general curating a feed or a social media presence and community that speaks to a niche audience. So that's kind
I'm
of
gonna steal that billboard example, the next executive run through I have, because I think that's a really good way of simplifying it. I often try to explain it and have them understand what is it that, so if I know that they're a shopper of shoes, or if I know that they're a sports shopper, I'll break it down that way. So when you were on Instagram last, what was the last thing you saw? Did you see a pair of shoes that you like? And they'll say, oh, yeah. And did you go buy it right away? Or did you now remember that it's available at Bloomingdale's? And then now are you saving that post? Or are you going directly to Bloomingdale's site instead of clicking onto the actual post? Or are you now going into the Bloomingdale's store because you saw it on social and now you're in store and you're buying it there? So that's one of the pieces that I think is tricky, is measuring the ROI of social. Is, of course, we can do a lot of funky technical things such as putting pixel links and tracking that and being able to get direct measurable sales from a lot of our e-commerce efforts. But what about the in-store purchases? That is a huge component. That's actually a missing piece of the puzzle for most people, but particularly in my industry. If I am doing a Nickelodeon post that's going up on Nickelodeon's Instagram about, let's say, a Paw Patrol toy that's going to be sold at Walmart, a parent may see that and say, great, I know that I want to buy this for little Johnny's birthday, but his birthday's in 3 months. And she now knows that that toy is available, but she's not buying it right away. She's going to buy it a little closer to his birthday, and she might actually buy it in store. So how do I know that social was the reason? I don't really. There isn't actually a science, but it's one of those things that it's really our job here. And a big part of my job is helping, executives, other people, any stakeholders understand that there's sort of a funnel. In a large part of it is awareness and in the impact that it's creating to the overall business and any trends that we're doing, but also using social for feedback. That's a big piece that we look through the comment section and people suggest product ideas all the time. And you have this direct communication going back to your billboard. You don't have any feedback on the billboard. You actually don't know if people liked that billboard or not. But on social, you have direct feedback and it's immediate. You can look, I can look immediately and see if people like that product or not.
Yeah, what I find so interesting, and particularly when we're talking prior, like you and I are in this space where we're trying to get our message out to as many people as possible. Whereas I know, and I want Jorge to chat a little bit about, because when you were talking previously, it was your audience is so niche that if you get one chef to buy something, you've proven your ROI, correct? Like there's or not one chef, I use that as an example, but I don't know, maybe you can chat a little bit more about that, because I find it fascinating. Whereas I'm in such as many people can see this, I hope in the area and the audience can come in. I think it was really interesting about the sort of targeting that you have. And even if it's a huge production, if you can get 1 or 2 clients or 1 or 2 accounts from that, it seems like it's a big win, no?
Yeah, no, Dylan, you're right. And that's a great way for us to start talking about content creation and how the process works. But so in my world, in the world of culinary and food service, it is a very different market. I don't need 200,000 people. I need 100 people to look at something, and I want 1 or 2 to say yes to it, because those 1 or 2s are huge accounts, most likely the corporate chefs of a fast food chain that are going to bring in millions of dollars. So how that works for us from beginning to end is our clients come up with a let's call it a problem, right? They say, hey, we have this new fried chicken fillet. We want to throw it out there. There's a chicken war going on right now. Everybody has chicken sandwiches. We want to be a part of it. Here's the coolest, best chicken fillet ever. It comes in spicy. It comes in original. It's the best. Okay, nobody knows us. What are we going to do? So we say, okay, so to get into the chicken wars, you have to come in. You got to come in hot, because it's been going on and everybody wants it. So what we do is we create a really good campaign behind the product. And after that, we try to create the right content for those corporate chefs of big to middle-sized chains that are going to eventually say, okay, I want to try that new chicken. What is it about this campaign that makes me want to try that chicken? We're actually developing photography right now. I'm writing concepts that will become recipes that just make that chicken look so goddamn juicy and delicious that you have to try it. So that's what we do. I'm creating those. They're gonna go into a photography. We're gonna make a really fun video for it. And we're gonna send these packages to our targeted audience. They're gonna receive it. They're gonna be able to watch the video through a code on their phone that they're gonna scan it. They're gonna get the photos. They're gonna get the recipe ideas and a sample of the product. And like you were saying, all I want is for one guy that has 1,000 restaurants to say, we'll take your chicken. That is a win for my client, and that's a win for us in our campaign.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's you know, we're in such a numbers game here where I'm constantly reporting on, you know, I mean, we have a ton of accounts, but we're constantly reporting on, like, you know, follower growth and impressions and engagement rate and all sorts of like social metrics. Whereas you're building the full campaign, and if that convinces somebody, it's a huge win. So I think you know, Jorge, if you want to chat any more about, I think that maybe the process of actually creating the content and kind of maybe like what that looks through, and then I can, like, you know, if a client comes to you, they say, we have this thing, what are you doing for them? You know, we had this product, I had this soda, it's different, what are you doing for them? Like, I guess just higher up.
Right. So you mean like a larger campaign kind of thing?
Yeah, just in general, I guess, from like soup to nuts kind of. We don't have all that time, but I think like if somebody says, you know, I have this one product, you know, do they come to you and say, how do you market it? Or do they come to you and say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, can you help us do it?
Sure. It's funny, almost always is, hey, we came up with a new product and we have no idea how to market it. And I think that's very funny because we're talking about giant companies. I mean, companies that everybody knows. I'm not gonna give any names, but it's companies that we all know.
We're picking up on it when you said chicken wars with spicy chicken. I think I know who.
Listen, Mariel, everybody has a spicy chicken now. And if they don't, they're running behind.
Yeah.
But, let's say, I'll give you an example of a peanut butter company that came to us very, very big and said, hey guys, we came up with a new kind of peanut butter. It's a sauce. You can pump it. Okay, so what do we do now? And we're like, well, okay. So what you start discovering with these new products is that they're so new that people don't know about them. What does it look like? How does it handle? Can I whisk it? Do I have to melt it? Does it stay in the shelf? These are all the things that chefs are worried about, that the guy that runs a hotel is worried about, that the operator at a chain is worried about. So we have to start by, you were saying education is very important. We have to start by educating our clients on this new product. Then we have to give them ideas because, okay, cool, I love it, I'm gonna buy it. What do I do with it? Okay, well, let's go beyond the basics. Let's go beyond what you already know is to be peanut butter. Let's not put it on toast. What if I tell you that it's amazing on dressings? What if I tell you it's one of the coolest things to add to a marinade? And that will elevate your menu to a whole new place, right? So a lot of these companies, they want to become not only a provider of a product to this chef or this chain, they want to become a partner. They want to do it together. They want to say, hey, I'm not just going to sell you the product and say, okay, thank you, bye. They want to say, hey, here's the product. Let's come up with ideas together. Let me help you part of the marketing. I'll pay for part of it. If you want to put a box in every takeout that you do nowadays, because clearly takeout is a huge deal on the go, I'll pay for the boxes. We'll put both our logos in it. It's a 50-50. It's a win-win. So we help them do all of that, right? We say, hey, instead of just creating a product and saying, please somebody buy this. No, we get proactive. We go, we show it, and then again, in the niche market that I work in, because our clients our clients, the people that we're trying to sell to, are so big that all we need is for one of them to say yes. And from there on, we've done even more. So some of those clients end up becoming our clients. So we have clients that are fast food chains that we have them on retainer. And every month we do ideation sessions on how to develop the menu, how to come up with more sauces, more sandwiches. What's the next chicken sandwich? Forget spicy. Now I want, sweet chicken sandwich is the new thing. Let's go crazy on sweet. So it's funny how that market works, but it's all in the content that you create. And sometimes content doesn't have to be on social media. Content can be just directly under menu. If they have a really good menu and you walk up to it, you're loving it. You just go, I don't even know what I want. Everything looks amazing. Maybe it even has photos. You're in it. You want to go there
Is
more.
your strategy to use the content both like in finding efficiencies by using your social content on the menus? Like, are you using user generated content in that way? And maybe that's more a question for you, Dylan, but I'm curious actually myself, how you guys are trying to find efficiency, because I know that's something I'm being tasked with all the time.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, different than than what Jorge was saying, but a little at the end, like we as an agency work on a retainer basis for all of our clients. Very rarely do we have a single project because it doesn't typically make the most sense for the client. Our services are things like social media management, content creation, digital advertising, influencer, web design, all the kit and caboodle, right? Internet stuff. So internet stuff with a lean towards marketing. So we help with all sorts of things. There's a fast casual that we do all the menu pictures for, but at the same time, we'll run 2 setups. So, from terms of a production, we'll have our lights and really strobes and everything all set up, tripod camera, the works, and we're shooting their menu, and we're working with a stylist, we're working with whatever, and that's what's living underneath their menu, right? It's their grilled cheese, supreme, whatever the heck. But then we use that product and we bring it outside and we take a bunch of pictures of it on our iPhones in our hands, and we do things like boomerangs, and we create reels of them being created. And it all kind of happens in tandem, because as we were speaking about before, the content that you may need for your whole sort of funnel or your whole marketing mix, you can't use it across the board. Or if you are a brand that can, and there are some that have this baked in, this very casual feel, this very lived in feel, that's a dream, but you have to do that from day one, and you have to be comfortable with that being your brand. Particularly in the fast casual space, there's a couple sort of gluttonous chicken places or even grilled cheese stuff. It's like this food porny Instagram thing can work. But then when you scale up, you got 5, 10 locations, you got to start printing catering pamphlets. And the person on the catering pamphlet doesn't want to see 15 sandwiches stacked together in their face. They want to see what it would look like if they bought this for 500 people in their office. So the content there does scale in different directions. Again, it also scales with kind of like budget. If you want to do a couple hour photo shoot, or if you want to do a full day or multiple days because you need to shoot your full menu. We had a fast casual come to us, a pretty established one that was acquired by someone else. And they were like, we're reopening post-pandemic. We have 500 different menu items that we need to shoot. And we were on site for, 5 days. It all needed to be styled. It all needed to be perfect. And that was very different than what we typically do. But we still somehow found a way to create social content out of it as well. And I think maybe something that separates us just as the niche and the industry that we're in is that we're really interested in making it work for the client. And we know that these can be very labor intensive shoots, particularly if you're just a single property or if you're just a few locations. And how do they get the best bang for their buck? Right. I mean, if we think about things like food cost, and my brain always goes back to food and beverage, but if we think about things like food cost, right, and they have a $30 burger on their menu and it's got foie and it's got a bacon and it's got all these crazy things. It's in my best interest to keep the chef happy and just have him make one. And if I can repurpose that for both a Grubhub or Uber Eats image, as well as a website image that's a nice hero DSLR, really beautiful, and then at the same time create some video zoom in Instagram thing, why not? And that's kind of the way that I think we've baked that in terms of content creation. Very social focused, but if you need us to do the glossy stuff, we can. Probably a different production, honestly, than what Jorge's doing. But yeah, I guess Yeah, I guess from the content creation umbrella, Marielle, what's it like on your end? Like, how do you get the content that you're posting?
A million different avenues. So agencies like yourself, obviously not you exactly, but ones that are more centralized.
Not yet, right?
Right. I know if you branch out to retail, we're making relationships right here. But brands that are agencies that specialize in styling of products, and that's a very different ball game than styling food, as you guys very much know. A large part is also an internal team. That has been something that is evolving, and kind of going back to what you're saying is, I think it's what's fascinating is how much the quality of content has evolved over the years of social media. So we're talking about, we've all been out of school now and working in this field for about 8-9 years. And when social media just started, it was just kind of this, to your point, of everyone needed to get on it and you didn't really have a strategy. You didn't even think you really needed a strategy. Like, just posted an ugly picture with a terrible filter on it and a border around it and really called it a day. And then it heightened. Social media's impact grew significantly. And then, at least in my industry, there was a big shift of putting the best content forward possible. And what that did was it actually really slowed things down. So what we found was we were going into these large scale production shoots and these really long, labor intensive, very costly as well, shoots that then I'm not getting these assets for at minimum a month later in the traditional media world. And that isn't really relevant at this point on social. And so there has definitely been a shift in the last couple of years. And then I think the pandemic heightened that just because of resources, and everyone really was forced to create on their own. And of now it being a little bit more DIY, and it's a lot more casual. The content that we're seeing perform best actually is the ones that feel organic and feels like your best friend posted it versus it feeling like an advertisement. And I think that's a large piece that we haven't really touched on, and is we're trying to break the mold of not feeling like an advertisement, but we're obviously trying to be, we are an advertisement. Mine is particularly an advertisement, but my goal is to find a solution that both marries making it an advertisement and having it work for my CP team, but then making it feel aesthetically pleasing and aligns with the creative aesthetic of that page. And sort of the best way I can put it and is saying, like, kind of tricking the consumer into consuming that content and then wanting to buy that product. Because when you are served an ad on social, it's a bit disruptive in your feed. And our goal is to be disruptive in a good way, disruptive that you want to go buy it. And I think that's a challenging piece that I think in the last couple of years, brands have gotten a better feel for it. I see this all the time, but they'll use just influencers who maybe posted a tutorial of this makeup, and now that's their advertisement that they're going to use on TikTok. And that's, in my industry, has been performing much better than content that we're actually producing, which I think we should jump into the content creator side of it. But before we do, I will, just to close out how we get content. As I said, we work with agencies. We have an internal team, but that is a little bit challenging because they're very traditional media advertisers. But one of the things that my team in particular has incorporated in the last year is we have now a design lead that's specific to our world. And she's really immersed in the world of social and she understands it. And so I can avoid having to go through those long briefing process. If there's a SpongeBob meme that's trending and I have a t-shirt with that same meme saying, I need to capitalize on it and post on it right away because it's going to be old in 6 hours and I need to do it right away. And how do we do that quickly and efficiently? You really need to have dedicated resources that are really on tap. So for things like that, we call them opportunistic posts. And that's when I'm using my internal creative lead to really execute that. There's other times where we have long lead times, like we launched the Paw Patrol movie and we knew the products that were coming. We knew them for a year. We knew that they were going to launch in August. So that's something where we could use an agency because we can plan into it. We are able to identify that strategy. There isn't really going to be many curveballs that come with us. There's always curveballs, but we can anticipate the majority of that. So that's really depends on the use case and what the objective is how we determine the content solution. As I mentioned, and switching gears a little bit into the content creator space, that has sort of become a term that's interchangeable with influencers now. But that is something that really heightens, I saw in the pandemic. So all of a sudden, everyone who had in studios did have access to them. So how are you creating content? And so what we did is we really relied on influencers who were both large in scale, but also really good content creators that aesthetic aligns with our aesthetic. And now they're not only providing awareness on their platform and reaching a different audience, but they're also providing us an asset that then we can use on our platforms. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone, and it's become a really effective way for us to both market products and to content create.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think influencer gets a bad rep.
Yes.
I think for anyone who's not really in the space, right? But it is a channel that all digital marketers really use nowadays. I mean, it's specifically if you're playing in the social space. You know, what these apps have done is they've done a fantastic job of getting everyone on them. And in the early days, it was the Wild West, and you just built your audience, and you got all of these. You got these big dopamine hits when you had a post that went viral, or you had this, and you got, you know, and you had, let's say, you got to 5,000 people on your Facebook page, and then slowly over time, Facebook and Instagram said we have to start making money, and because of that, you know, they started throttling the amount of people that would see your post, right? The reach that your post would get. For anyone who's less familiar, I'll walk through a little bit of that. But so it became harder and harder to reach the audience that you had worked so hard to garner over the last few years. And now it's near impossible unless you have one of these big hits. You know, as Marielle was just mentioning, you know, unless she capitalizes on a meme in literally minutes, you know, she's missed the opportunity. And that's how that threaded needle needs to be, right? That's how precise that needs to be if you want to game the organic social media system. And now there's only a few ways to really get outside of what I call the bubble, which is the existing audience. And even within the existing audience, your bubble's never blowing up to where it used to be, because it's not in Instagram or Facebook's best interest to show all of your content to all of your followers. What they work on now is an sort of, I equate it to like an upvote downvote system, if anyone's familiar with Reddit, where if you post something, if it performs well in the beginning, it'll continue to perform and it will show it to more and more people. But in general, it's really difficult to game that system. There's a lot of people on social now. It's never been more difficult to get your stuff seen. And in addition to that, there's lots of people paying big ad dollars to get their content seen. So, you know, there are a few ways to get outside of that bubble. And one of them is influencers and working with someone who has their own bubble and is their own trusted resource. And, you know, the benefit of this is if you structure it well enough, you know, in my space, in the F&B space, if you structure it well enough, you can get, you know, you send somebody in for food costs, right? Somebody comes in for dinner. They have 200,000 followers on Instagram. We buy them and a couple friends a meal. They post some really cool pictures. And in my sort of contract or my email with them, I had said, hey, if it's possible, can you get a picture of this chicken dish? Because I need it for an email blast. And if you're cool with it, we'll give you credit in the email blast. And, you know, and then it's a whole
nother. You'll put their @ name on it. So it's an incentive 100%. For them.
Right, 100%. And they just normally, in our space, it's kind of like smaller potatoes, for lack of a better term, but it's just all barter based. So we're not doing a lot of paid stuff unless we get into the hotel aspect of things. But for food and beverage, it's a lot of barter. Come in, keep it casual, take some pictures, post on Instagram stories. And what we find, particularly in like a metropolitan area like New York, is like, it really does work. Our followers really do grow. People do really care where the influencers go. Whether they say they do or they don't, these people are tastemakers. You know, if they have 100,000 followers, at some point, 100,000 people chose to follow them. So if I think that that person's niche and that person's like where I want my audience to go, it's really worthwhile for me to do it. And if I can work in some, you know, UGC, user generated content, or some, you know, work with them as a content creator for us, it's such an amazing thing. Not only that, but the reason people follow them is because their portfolios are live on their social media channels all the time. Their whole body of work is right in front of you. So if I can have a location that is tailor-made for this influencer, of course my posts or my location is going to perform very well because I know what their feed is. If I'm a beautiful coffee shop, I'm not going to invite in the guy who has 100,000 followers but takes pictures of rock concerts, because those two things don't equate. Right. So I need to work. And now we're fortunately at a point where there's such a breadth of influencers that you can really choose your niche. You can really find who you want to work with. And in addition to that, sort of tweak what they're willing to create for you in terms of whether it's paid compensation or barter compensation, or typically in the hotel space, you a couple nights. So it's people want to stay. They want the content as badly as you need the content. It's just this kind of game of like tug of war.
And I think what's interesting there is how much the influencer industry has been rapidly changing. I feel like when it first started getting popular, everybody was throwing money. Big brands were throwing big dollars at people with millions of followers, and no one really knew what you were getting. You just knew you had to add influencer marketing into your marketing mix. And what that sort of created was this sense of urgency to do that. And there was really no strategy. And I often joke around about how I just wish all the brands could get together and talk about it together to be like, all right, how much are you paying them? What are you paying them? Because there is really no standard. And that's great for the influencers because they have a little bit more leverage in this space because they can say this is their rate and we want to work with them. They can walk away. Oftentimes they don't and you negotiate, but I think that has been something that's been very interesting how that's changed. It was very hot on getting the big guys with 1 million followers, but then those people started doing advertisement after advertisement after advertising, and it just didn't feel genuine at that point. So then
now they all own their own brands, right? Now they've all created brands, and you've been kind of like, right.
And they don't need the couple $1,000s that we'd give them. And then it turned into the mid-tier influencers, which I would consider someone in like that 500,000 range. And those were people that we kind of turned to next, and they were smaller in scale, often really good content creators. That's something I also want to caveat, that a lot of times the people at the 1 million follower range didn't actually get there because of their quality of their content. And they didn't always produce the best content. It was that mid-range that was producing some really good content, and that started working really well for us from both a reach perspective and a content acquisition tool. But then that got infiltrated, and now everybody was working with those guys. And so now it has been a lot more on what we're calling kind of very much the micro influencers. And some people consider a micro influencer to have 100,000 followers. I would consider the micro influencers, we're talking like around that 10,000 mark, even lower. But what you're doing there is for the same price that maybe you paid the person with the $1 million, with 1 million followers, you could now get 30 people with say 10,000 followers. And now you're reaching way more people, and it feels a lot more genuine. And I think that's the key that in picking influencers has also changed as well. You spoke on that, Dylan, just now about making sure that you're not sending the person who posts rocks into the beautiful coffee shop. We're doing the same thing. We're needing to make sure that they have an affinity for our brands, that they also represent our brands well. That has been something that has always been important to us, to make sure that we are maintaining diversity in both the, in race and size and gender and what their interests are. But that has been something I think all brands have really incorporated into their strategy, particularly in 2020, in making sure that they're working with a diverse portfolio of influencers, but that those people also align with their brand message and represent the same values.
Right.
Go ahead, Liza.
Oh, it looks like a question came up that was, we can click answer live. Do you want me to read it?
I can read it. So
Perfect.
We have a question from Shanice about influencers. What content do you find more effective? Content created by the brand or content provided by influencers, and which is more cost effective?
I mean, I think we're all maybe have different answers to this one. I can go first, but I think it's not necessarily cost effective to work with, it can be, but it's not necessarily cost effective to work with influencers. If you're working in sort of the barter system that Dylan is talking about, that could be very cost effective. In my industry, sending them a t-shirt with SpongeBob on it is a little bit less desirable than getting free cocktails and a meal. So it's a little bit more challenging to get that barter system going. So we often do need to pay them, or what we're doing is we're sending them a curated experience. So we're putting together like a very packaged goods. And so now we're paying for that experience of giving them a custom personalized box with their name on it, that has a denim jacket with their name on it, and now all the other toys, and kind of giving them these incentives to want to share. So there is still a cost associated, whether that's how we're distributing the product. I still have to pay for the product, or paying them to do that. So it can be cost efficient if you know you're working with the right person and you're going to hit the two birds with one stone, getting reach and getting content. But I think going back to my earlier point of, it really depends on what the objective is. So that wouldn't be a viable solution for what I was speaking about with these opportunistic moments. If it's a SpongeBob meme, I'm not sending that to an influencer because that turnaround time won't be fast enough. But it can be very cost efficient for me for like food stuff. If I have a Paw Patrol snack, I might actually, because food styling, these guys are experts in that, can be very challenging, expensive. And so I may send it to somebody who's, a mommy blogger who creates food content all the time. And I see that this could be a perfect fit. And then that may work just as well.
There's also some brands. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Jorge.
Well, I was just going to say it's so different for my industry because our target audience are operators and chefs and restaurant owners. So they're not really that much into the influencer world, but they know names of people that can make an influence in their decision, right? So if I get one of our big brands we work with to hire a Roy Choi or a chef that is out there that is known, he's big, but he's not huge. And this guy says, man, I love this peanut butter. Done. I mean, that's all I need. I need him to promote that one time because he's a respected chef that other chefs are going to respect. And that's what I want. That's how our influencers work. It's this system of respect. So it's almost completely different from that thing. They don't give a shit how many, people follow Roy Choi. They know he's a legit guy. That's all they need. So it's so different for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in our space, we're trying to target as many people as we can. So it's kind of a broader thing. What we've also done for some smaller brands that we've worked with, and what I see just being done is, I think conversely, really to let Marielle was saying is some brands go with the accuracy by volume approach. If your product is pretty cheap, let's say you make iPhone cases, right? And you just want to get them, and they say cute things. You would just send 4 of them to 30 influencers because what's the worst that could happen? These people either give them away or they give you a tag on stories, but your cost of product or your cost of goods is so low. So sometimes there's just these giant, massive gifting campaigns. I have a few friends that work for agencies that's all that they do. They just curate lists of addresses and influencers, and they just send stuff. I don't think it's the most genuine. I don't think it's making the most contact, but there have been brands that have scaled that way. There have been, believe it or not, like a Warby Parker actually, early days, I think I had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 followers, and I was posting about fashion and food in the city and whatever. And they invited me in to get 10 pairs of glasses. And I was like, 10 pairs of glasses? Because it doesn't cost them anything, because they were just trying to get continued tags and mentions, and they were in it for the long haul. And honestly, as much as I thought that was wacky at the time, they clearly proved me wrong, and whatever they did worked. So it really is, it really is just different approaches. That was another thing. It was the Wild West back then, but they obviously, threw spaghetti against the wall and it stuck, and it really worked for them. So it's not, I guess it goes back to, again, what we were talking about. It's what's your objective? What's the product you're trying to sell? And, not every influencer is going to be a fit. Sometimes influencer in general is not even going to be a fit. And you need a little bit more of an ambassador, as Jorge was talking about, and somebody who doesn't have a following, but has a few people who care about what he does or he or she does. It's that is influencer as well. So we're not talking, there's a big difference between a Roy Choi and the Kim Kardashian, right? One has giant mega reach, and and a lot of people are indifferent about it or whatever. And the other one has a smaller reach, but a very dedicated following and a very dedicated and loyal listening audience. So just figuring out where that falls. I think that's a decent spot to leave it with influencers.
Great. If any of the alums listening have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A. And while we wait for that, one thing I want to circle back to, I know you talked a lot about, just kind of getting on the platforms and playing around with them. Are there any other ways that you can suggest to your fellow alums that they can learn these platforms? Are there articles? Are there sources that you go to for more information about the changes? Any advice you can give there?
Yeah, I mean, everything's on the internet.
Yeah.
Honestly, nowadays it's like in college for me, it's like my senior year of college, I picked up a camera. And I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. And a bunch of my friends at Johnson & Wales actually would cook every Sunday. They were all chefs around the city, and they would just like cook. Sunday was their day off. They would get together, they would cook. And I picked up this camera, I started taking pictures. And then I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this, in content creation. And I ended up just watching video after video on YouTube and different things. And I still do it today. I get stumped with some platform or something. There's always somebody in YouTube that's like, make sure you like and subscribe below. And here's the answer to your problem. It's all out there. You just have to be willing to learn it. But then learn it to a point where you're literate in it and you can teach other people and you can actually sell this as a service. Fortunately, we're at a point, I guess, right now, before Instagram releases their next update, that we have a pretty good grasp on everything that's happening. But really, we're at the mercy of the platforms. I always say, like, we're the players in the ballpark. They're selling the tickets. They own the bats and the balls. They own the arena. And if they want, they can just choose to sub us out. They're really dictating the game. They get to say you're on the bench or you're on the field, and you just hope that you can continue to sort of play the game and you can continue to like put things out there that the fans want to see.
Another thing that is just like a tip that I have is my team. We have a test account. We all have the same password. It's a dummy account. We have no followers. It's private. No one can follow it but us. And we try out and we play around. So when Instagram launched Reels, I'm just like uploading things in my bedroom. Like they make no sense. It's just to figure out the tools. And I think that's the key is when Instagram just drops a bomb on us, and we talk about Instagram, but they all do this. They just drop a bomb. We're launching Reels or we're taking that button away. We're doing this. They don't give you a toolkit on how to go navigate it. You got to figure it out yourself. Like they have references on Facebook Business that, help you understand what it is, but you really won't get it until you try it. And so that's a tip that I say is like having a fake account, which I just refer to it as a test account instead, to really try and play around with the tools. If you don't use them yourself on your own platform and you don't want to be active personally, that's the way I'd say is create a private account that you can really test things. And sometimes we'll put up content before it goes live on our page just to see how it looks and to see how it is and see how it looks within the space. And then once we do, we might make a tweak.
We have one more question from an alum and we'll wrap up after this. Are there any social accounts that inspire you to create better content?
All of them.
Yeah.
whether it's create better content than that account or create the best content, because there is so much out there. There is, we now have access to follow practically everything we're interested in. We have access to follow in real time, and people are creating all the time. I mean, everyone, whether you know it or not, like this iPhone is an amazing tool to just create and not only to consume, but to contribute. And because of that, the threshold and the barrier of entry for content creation that's palatable, we were talking about it before, this sort of like, kind of sneaking in under the radar because you're creating content that feels organic, but you're in that same mix with all the other organic content. And that being said, you're in the mix with people who don't really know how to use an iPhone and people who really do. And then hopefully your high-res commercial is going to sort of sneak under the radar there too. So it's really less like one specific account, honestly, and I because it's probably too many to count, but really just absorbing as much as you can and looking at it from why did they, not just as a great piece of content, wow, that's so pretty, but in my example, in the food space, it's like, I look at what props did they use? What's the background look like? What are the filters on the setting? What are the treatments on the imagery? How did they create this reel? Did they shoot it on a phone? Did they not? Like, all these different things. And then you kind of reverse engineer and you end up finding your own style, which at least as a creator for myself, like that's kind of what I've done. But I think just for me, I know all of them's a cop-out answer. But
no, I would say the same thing. But I would also say in the last year, I would say TikTok. I have found that a lot of trends are starting on TikTok, whether it's just the way the topics discussing a meme, it starts on TikTok and then it makes its way, it migrates to Twitter, and then it migrates to Instagram actually last. And I find if I'm active on TikTok, I'm more in the know of what's trending, what are the trending topics, even just vocabulary to use in a caption really is stemming on TikTok. So I feel like that's been the hot button. But I would say that I look more towards influencers now or creators versus brands. I used to look at a lot of brands and take that, but I think it's very applicable to their brand, where I look at different creators and they're creating for multiple different brands. And I like to see that the way that they're creating a thread of connectivity between all these different brands and then their own aesthetic.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much, Dylan, Jorge, Marielle. What a pleasure to have you this evening, and what a great conversation. We're so appreciative to you for taking your time to share your expertise and learned lessons with your fellow alums. I'd also like to thank all of our alumni for attending tonight, and hope you found the discussion insightful. It was so interesting to hear all of your collective experiences on this topic, but also to learn from you. As alums, you know JWU provides a truly unique and exceptional education. Tuition alone does not fully cover all that sets Johnson & Wales apart, including the experiential opportunities critical to success in a marketing career. Please consider making a gift of any amount to the Providence College of Business. Your gift will directly and immediately support our students, and as an alumni donor, you'll contribute to the growth of JWU's reputation, which increases the value of your own JWU degree. If you're in a position to give back and you can do so, please click the link in the chat window, and thank you in advance for your support. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed tonight's discussion, part of the JWU Connects family of programming, and I hope that you'll join us again in the future. For the full listing of upcoming events, including SIP with JWU on September 29th, please visit the event calendar at alumni.jwu.edu. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.